The Delhi High Court recently asked the Central Government Council, would you like to wind up the National Green Tribunal? This was in a response to a PIL file drawing attention to the government's inaction on appointment of new members for the tribunal, as old ones are very close to retirement. Welcome everyone to Urban Reality, where the spotlight is on how and why we should be fighting to keep India's green watchdog, NGT, alive and thriving. And here are some important questions we will get answers to on today's show. Our first question, how effective has NGT actually been in bringing justice in India's environment cases? The tribunal was set up by an Act of Parliament in 2010 as a specialist forum to protect our air, water and land from reckless development. But guess what? The government sneaked in some amendments to the appointment criteria of NGT chairperson and members through the Finance Act 2017. Now, we want to know whether the government, with these changes, is likely to cripple the NGT Act 2010. And finally, by December this year, you're staring at a tribunal with only 5 members instead of a minimum of 10, which is very worrying and begs the final question. Is India's Green Tribunal simply going to languish with government apathy on appointment of new members? Joining me today are Ritwick Dutta, environmental activist and lawyer, also Sridhar Pabbishetty, CEO of Namma Bengaluru Foundation, and Aditya Pratap, lawyer, Aditya Pratap and Associates. All right, so let me begin with you, Ritwick. My first question is, rate NGT openly and fearlessly on its effectiveness in disposing of matters. I mean, we have actually seen a lot of action. We feel that NGT settled down, in fact, after the first 2-3 years of turmoil and had started really noticing and bringing to notice some big cases.
So I think what is really acknowledged today, not only in India but across the world, that it has been the most effective environmental court.
Wow.
Not only in India but across the world.
Globally as well?
Yes, globally except. And that's the reason why when the UN decided to actually have UNEP, decided to have its international law meeting, they chose India to do it. And today there are countries across the world which are actually emulating the NGT experience, because there's nothing compared to what the kind of judicial decisions that the NGT has given. So therefore, if you look at it, it has definitely been an effective one. But like any institution that is there, which is set up, there will always be the other side. So there will be people, definitely like any court that we have, there will be good decisions, there will be not so good decisions, and there will be parties to it. I think NGT also has that mixed bag with it.
Mixed bag.
But the fact of the matter is today, about 200 cases are heard roughly every single day. Right?
200 cases
yes.
every single day?
In all all the 5 benches combined together,
right.
You look at the cause list, it is not something that has ever happened before. And just think of the opportunity that is there, and also people's grievances, because it also symbolizes that how much people actually have problem with the existing system. They are actually in need of a tribunal of this kind. And therefore, from 2011 when it's set up, and now, this itself is the sign. And look at the judicial decisions that is there. And I would still say it is still not even utilized 10% of its potential.
Now, Aditya, I'm going to come to you. You've also actually taken some cases and won them on behalf of Mumbai slum dwellers, where reconstruction was happening, where NGT pronounced that, look, you cannot snatch away open spaces in the name of construction.
Yes.
If I look at most judgments, they're focused on 3 principles of environment legislation, either polluters pay or its precautionary principle, and most importantly, of course, is sustainable development, which we all understand. What's your own verdict on how effective NGT has been?
Well, when the National Green Tribunal started in 2010, it was a revolutionary step. There were strong judgments. We had orders in the Western Ghats case, in several cases, and there were strong judgments and projects were stopped. But as the years have passed, as time has passed, the effectiveness of the institution has dwindled, and this is not because of the central government. First of all, there are several cases involving steel plants, real estate projects where there are major corporate houses involved. What has happened in these cases? They are pending for the last 3 to 4 years. And why are these cases pending? It is because when the case is filed, immediately the lawyers for the opposite side, they will start filing miscellaneous application on trivial issues like delay, locus standi, limitation. And the tribunal apparently considers itself more important to hear these issues first. The end result is that many cases, there are serious cases which have been pending for the last 2-3 years, and this is in violation of Section 19 of the Act, which states that tribunal shall dispose of the cases in 6 months.
In 6 months.
And there is one more point.
But, so, Aditya, are you saying then that, NGT has not been effective, or are you saying that it's been effective but only to a certain degree?
Exactly. It started off strong, but with the passage of time, the effectiveness has dwindled. And what is even more problematic is that the tribunal has several zonal benches. In every court in India, be it the High Court or Supreme Court, the assignment, there is rotation of assignment every 2 months. In the National Green Tribunal, there is no system of rotation of assignment. Further, even when we see the NGT orders involving major projects, what has happened? If a huge corporate house is doing a project, what order comes? They impose penalty of 5% of the project cost, 10% of the project cost. So in cases where you should order demolition...
5 to 10% is not low. 5 to 10% is not low. All right, I think you made your point, Aditya, and I can see the passion. And I've also seen NGT actually being at loggerheads with both the central and the state governments. On the other side, Sridhar Pabbishetty, we also hear that NGT is actually diluting its stance in several cases because of government pressure. Where do you stand on this discussion and debate, whether NGT has been effective? And if there wasn't NGT, would you have even got any victory on any of the cases? Look at the Bellandur Lake case in Bengaluru.
Yes, absolutely. I think let's go back to the need of an institution like NGT as India goes from a developing to a developed country status. We are a transitional economy, and sustainable development will not happen automatically. It is a long effort, and in this NGT has played very crucial role. And I'll highlight with just 2 examples. When we took up the case of Bellandur Lake, it needs a serious application of mind to look at how can we make progress and how can we have sustainable development in the city and not become a sitting duck for real estate and other vested interests. The hit back is strong. There are serious lobbies that are trying to undermine the institution, but nevertheless, we are having a voice for the green. Today, we are happy that Bellandur Lake is back on track and the government is seriously pushed to actually act in protecting the lakes. I'll give you another instance. In this instance of steel flyover, there were others who approached the South Bench, and they had to kind of put the government agencies on the mat, and they were able to prove that there was no due process followed and environmental impact assessment was subverted by a mix of 3 institutions. We were able to prove, because this tribunal and this process allows you to put environment in the first place. I think yes, there will be flaws in any institutions, and we should all work towards making them better, but India cannot progress ahead in the path of sustainable development until unless environment and ecology is strengthened through institutions like NGT. We should also look at how the state level impact assessment as institutions are also working, and until unless you strengthen them and make sure they align to NGT in the broad direction, we will have all this continuous tussle of not speedy justice.
All right. I must say that I have been disappointed with NGT in many of the cases. For example, Sri Ravi Shankar's tamasha, which had happened, and, NGT allowed it to happen. I don't think it had a choice because there were global participants coming. It was at the doorsteps and then later on penalized. But then this is probably the only body, other than the Supreme Court, which has openly criticized the central government, whether it's on how all the money spent on Ganga is not showing any results. So, with all its pitfalls, we still cannot do away with NGT, Ritwick, can we?
No, definitely not, because, it's a country where the NGT was set up not because the parliament legislated on it, but way back from 1985, the Supreme Court has been passing orders saying, well, when environmental matters like air pollution and water pollution comes before the court,
we are not qualified to understand them.
The judges are not qualified to understand. There are technical issues involved.
Right.
So therefore, judges are trained in law and not on science. And therefore, having technical members and members who know it. And we must also realize that environmental issues are not always about processes being followed. It's also about the merits of the issue. Now, for example, you just look at air pollution. With all respect to the judges in High Court and Supreme Court, how many of them actually understand the difference between PM 2.5, PM 10? Whereas if you go to the NGT, I think every member now knows
Understands
exactly about it. You don't have to start from scratch. And that makes it easy for people. And what is very important about it is the fact that the NGT actually functions with a large number of cases argued by petitioners in person.
Aditya, I know that you're upset saying that cases take up to 2 years, but in a country where cases don't get resolved for a decade to 2 decades, I don't think 2 years is very long, and sometimes intricacies are there. Having said that, let's come to the changes, our second big question. The changes which were introduced, or rather, should I just use the word sneaked in through the Finance Act, on who is qualified to be a member or chairperson of NGT. How damaging are these changes, according to you, to the independence of NGT? You are already questioning it, saying it's getting diluted. So is now NGT likely to get even further diluted?
See, when we see the Finance Act, of course, to reduce the size of the NGT or to put constraints on it, of course, these measures are not desirable. However, the bottom line of what the central government is trying to do is trying to reform the tribunal system in the country. What the objective is to reduce from 31 tribunals to 17 tribunals. Now, the most important thing is that, as I said about the rotation of benches example and other things, many environmental issues from my experience, they are based on law. The judge has to see whether the law is being complied or not. So by effectively amalgamating the tribunals and creating an appellate court which is, say, below the High Court but above these tribunals, the central government is in a way trying to bring about a more objective change to the entire decision-making process. It is like you can have one judge hearing cyber matters for 6 months, next 6 months he can hear environment matters. As a general practitioner in the High Court, I have seen for a fact that a judge, once he's trained in law, he can hear a variety of cases. Further, nothing stops the tribunal from engaging an expert and getting his opinion. Under Section 5 of the Evidence Act, any expert can come and give evidence. The tribunal system needs to be reformed.
That's an interesting aspect. I mean, I know that all of you got extremely hassled when these changes were introduced. I also, when I go back in history, and 2010, when the composition of the members and the functioning of the tribunal was decided, there was criticism at that point also that, why are you only appointing a Supreme Court judge as a chairperson with that much of experience? So which side of the debate do you stand in? I mean, Aditya is saying that, look, these changes are not actually bad.
Let's understand. I think I disagree with Aditya on one point, that if he reads the Finance Act and the rules that have come in, it doesn't talk about one tribunal. It talks about all 19 tribunals. So I'm not sure as to what he has seen it, because it doesn't talk about amalgamating all the tribunals into one tribunal. So the CAT will remain CAT, Armed Forces Tribunals, NGT, all will have the separate entity. If he thinks that as a lawyer, what is the reform that they are proposing? The first reform, if you use the word quote-unquote reform, is that the tribunal need not have a judge to head it. Any person can actually head the National Green Tribunal, number one. Number two, the chairperson of all the tribunals, National Green Tribunal, Armed Forces Tribunal, if they want to take leave, they will have to take permission from the secretary of the concerned department.
Right.
So chairperson of NGT, if he wants to now take one-day leave, will apply to the Secretary, Ministry of Environment and Forest.
God.
Yes, the second part.
And you cannot have that direct reporting structure between Ministry of Environment and Forest and NGT.
3 points there. Second point is the appointment which is now done by a committee headed by a sitting judge of the Supreme Court will now be headed by a former secretary to the Government of India. Removal of the members, which is presently to be done only by an inquiry by a sitting judge of the Supreme Court.
So all bureaucrats?
Yes, is replaced by a committee of the ministry. And they've used the word that tribunals will work under the administrative control of the ministry. They will be appointed, removed, and their terms of condition will be decided by the secretary under which they function. Which self-respecting Supreme Court judge will assume that position? Will citizens have faith and trust in an institution which is under the control of the executive? No.
Nobody. And that's a very, very tenuous relationship. I think, Ritwick, you've really highlighted 2 points. How will a Supreme Court judge report to a ministry bureaucrat? And also now all the members pretty much are going to be controlled by bureaucracy, which is not a good situation. I'm just wondering, though, if you have a prime minister who has ratified a Paris Climate Treaty and says this country is extremely committed to meeting its goals on climate change, why then are these changes being brought about on NGT? I know my other panelists have other points to present as well. We'll come back and keep this discussion going. Stay with us.